Now, since force and equilibrium lecture, we already knew that 200 Newton and 300 Newton, we solved it in the last class, where we made sure that you understood the resolution of the forces. Now, let's just work upon the same example question. If we just say that there is a Newton sign, there's a value, let's say, going down and towards the east, right? So there is a point that is 300 Newton and there is 150 Newton. Now, considering that there are forces that are 300 Newton and 150 Newton, what we need to understand is that when we will be solving the force, so this will go to somewhere close to this, right? Which will create a force towards down, and obviously there is this force. So the angle can be taken. So considering this, we can take this as 150 Newton, same as what we have. So if you want to calculate FR, so this is going to be under root 150 square plus 300 square. So your FR is 335.4 Newton. Similarly, if you want to calculate 10 inverse, so your 10 inverse will be 150 upon 300. Your 150 is the value, considering this should be 150 and this should be 300. So opposite upon adjacent. So theta becomes what? 26.6. But this is clockwise rotation. Clockwise rotation from positive x-axis. On the other hand, what we can have another example of such question where we have this towards the left and let's say towards the north, right? Towards the north, force is going, which is 400 Newton, and this is 300 Newton. So obviously, a force that will be there will go towards this side. Considering this, let's say we take this as resolution. So this is going upward and going left. So we need to calculate theta. So this is 400 and considering this as 300 force. So FR will be under root. FR will be 400 square plus 300 square, which means FR needs to be 500 Newton. Similarly, theta is equal to 10 inverse. This would be 400 upon 300. So this should be 53.1 Newton. But this will also go clockwise from negative axis, because obviously this is going upward. So this should be clockwise toward negative x-axis. Similarly, on the other hand, what you need to understand is that if you have angle of 200, force of 200, let's say a force of 200 and going down, right? Let's say this is 500 Newton and this is 200 Newton. So considering this, the force will go somewhere here and this should be FR. Knowing the fact that it will have the force upwards of same as 500 Newton. So your FR will be under root 500 square plus what? 200 square. So your FR will be what? 538.5 Newton. Whereas theta is equal to what? 10 inverse. This should be FV upon FH. So theta is equal to 10 inverse 500 upon 200. So theta should be what? 68.2. But this should be anti-clockwise from negative x-axis. So in such situation, we need to understand that if, for suppose, the resolution is there, right, and we need to work upon, let's say, FR, which means the force that is applied. So this would be summation of FV whole square plus summation of FH. Now, when do we apply this? When we have multiple forces. When we have multiple forces, which means if two forces are going upward, then obviously we'll be adding them. If two forces are going downwards, we'll be adding them. If two forces are going right, we'll add them. If the two forces are going left, we'll add them. Similarly, if you want to have theta, there should be tan inverse summation of V upon summation of what FH. This leaves me force, total of force vertical upon total of force horizontal. Let's say EFV is sum of all vertical forces and EFH is sum of all horizontal forces. Your FR is basically your resultant force. This is your resultant force. So if we want to take out summation of FV, so this would be upward force minus downward force. Force will always stay positive even if the answer is negative because it will just show the direction. Whereas this should be right minus left. Even if it is negative, we'll consider it as positive, but it will move the forces towards right or left. Let's just take down the example. Let's say that we have a force which goes on the right hand side, which is 150 Newton. There's a force acting downwards, which is 100 Newton. And there is a force acting diagonally, which is a 250 Newton. Similarly, we have been given an angle of what? 45 degree. Now, this is your question, an example question. Now, since we need to resolve vertical forces, let's say vertical forces upward minus what? Downwards, right? So, vertical forces are upward minus downwards, right? So, to calculate upward, what we need to understand is we already know that downward force is 100 Newton, right? So, need to have upward force as well. The upward force will be, if you just look at this, since we know that this is 45, this will be your upward force. And to have upward force, so what we do is we make sure that this is 250 sine 45 and this should be 250 sine 45 because we can't use the diagonal force of 250. We need to have horizontal or vertical. So this should be 250 cos 45. So let's say 250 cos 45. So this will move toward left, whereas this will move upward. So that means we have one downward force and the other one is the upward force here. Now let's just work upon the same concept. If we just work upon the same concept, we know that this force will be your force moving towards left and this will be force moving towards up, right? So this is going up and this is going left. So upward force is 250 sine 45. Downward force is 250 cos 45. So if we just need to have the answer for this, what the answer would be up minus down. So summation of FV, right, will be 250 sine 45 minus 100 Newton, right? So the end result of this would be 76.78 Newton. So this is force, submission force V. Since it is positive, considering that we will be considering that this is acting force upward. This is force acting upward. Now, similarly, if we just say that let's work upon the horizontal force. Your horizontal force will be right minus left. So your right force is 150 and your left force is 250 cos 45. And if we just see that this should be negative 2678. So that means it is acting on the left hand side, right force is less. So this is summation of FH. Now that means we have two forces that are acting what? One is acting upward, the other one is acting downwards, right? So we already know that we have two forces. One is acting upward, the other one is acting downward. So what we do is we draw up an angle. We draw up the angle according to that using these forces. Let's say that your upward force is 76.78 Newton, and your negative force, which means going toward left, is 26.78 Newton, right? So that means the new force that which we need to find out will be moving towards left. So we need to find out FR and the theta. So if we just involve, that means this thing will be the same parallel sides of 76. So let's take this 76.78. So can we say that FR will be submission of FR will be 76.78 whole square plus 26.78 whole square. So the value of FR is 81.3 Newton. Similarly, on the other hand, if we know that tan inverse is summation of V upon summation of H. So summation of V is what? Tan inverse is 76.78 upon 26.78. So now the theta that we involve is 70.8, which is clockwise from negative x-axis. So these are the two answers. One is 70.8 and the other is that we calculated is 81.3 Newton. So these were the forces calculated from the forces that were there, but these are all multiple forces. So multiple forces were calculated accordingly. We knew that we had the horizontal force as 150. There's another horizontal force. So this is right and this is left. Since we calculated, we end up getting minus 26.78. So that means the force is acting towards left. When we matched our vertical up and down, so we knew that 250 sine 45 is higher than 100 Newton. So that means the force will act upward, and the force acting upward is there. So we made sure that we draw up the angle, knowing that one force is acting upward and the other force is acting downwards on the left hand side. So what you need to have is FR and the theta. So what we generally did is we calculated 76.78. So we used it the same way. So to calculate the FR using the vertical and the horizontal square, we got 80.3 using the under root 76.78 whole square plus 26.78 whole square, right? And then obviously tan inverse 76.78 upon 26.78 Newton was used. So we got up about 70.8 as answer.